A Honda S2000 just sold at auction for over $112,000. 10 years ago, you could get one for $10,000. So how did Honda's back-to-basics sports car go from being a dime a dozen to costing 3 times as much as Honda's most expensive car on sale today? Well, it has to do with the S Roadster's nearly 60-year history, the ultra-rare Club Racer model, and a seemingly random shift in price trend in 2017. So let's go over the history of the Honda S Roadster, and with the help of video sponsor Auto Tempest, let's look at the price trends that led us to a 6-figure S2000. I'm Guff, this is Albon, let's get started.
国産最速のオープンスポーツに追加モデルが登場。
A en effet commercialisé à l'occasion d'une limited series.
With the S2000.
In order to understand the S2000, we need to start with its predecessors. Before Honda became the VTEC-powered household name that they are today, they used to be a simple motorcycle company. And at the head of it all, Soichiro Honda, the company's founder. By the late 50s, Honda had found themselves at the top of the motorcycle food chain, becoming one of the largest motorcycle manufacturers in the world. But despite the success of the motorcycle business, Honda's dealers begged Soichiro to give them something they could sell in the winter when motorcycle sales were at their lowest. Soichiro wasn't totally convinced, but it all came together in 1955 when the Japanese Ministry for Industry and Trade put on a promotion called the People's Car. This promotion was designed to fast-track any car project that had a top speed of 100 kilometers an hour, seated 4 people, and costed 150,000 yen. This was the perfect opportunity for Honda, so in 1957, Soichiro hired 50 engineers to develop a car that met the criteria of the ministry. It was a difficult process going from motorcycles to cars, but Soichiro insisted that the team take their time and create something that was truly worthy of the Honda name. And 5 years later, in June of 1962, Honda had their first car. On a sunny day at Suzuka Circuit, Honda showed off their never-before-seen S360 to their dealer network. It was a striking convertible sports car with a 360cc engine at the front, powering the rear wheels. Honda's dealers loved it, and so Honda decided to bring it to that year's Tokyo Auto Show. Along with it though, Honda brought the S360's bigger brother, the S500. It was basically the same car, but this one had a big block 531cc engine. That's 0.5 liters, by the way. And, well, the S500 stole the show. The larger engine size was much more palatable to a wider audience, making a whopping 44 horsepower at 9,500 RPM. And so Honda decided to drop the S360 entirely and give the S500 the green light. Released in 1963, the S500 was well loved by the Japanese public. But with competition quickly rising from the Datsun Fairlady and the Toyota Sports 800, Honda couldn't afford to stop innovating. So in 1964, the S600 was introduced. As the name suggests, this bumped the motor to 600 cc's, making 57 horsepower. Fast forward another year, and Honda released the S800 at the 1965 Tokyo Motor Show. And this one was important. The S800 boasted Honda's 791cc inline-4 that made 70 horsepower with a red line of 10,000 RPM. It was Honda's first car to reach 100 miles per hour, and in 1967, it was the fastest sub-1 liter production car in the world. This was also the year that Honda began exporting the S800 to Britain, where it went head-to-head against the Mini Cooper and the Triumph Spitfire, and held its own as a pure sports car. The S800's performance success was so serious that they decided to make a race car called the Honda S800 RSC. RSC was Honda's racing service center, which was established at Suzuka Raceway as a tuning shop for Honda's sports car owners. The S800 RSC had a bored-out 873cc engine that revved to 10,500 RPM. High compression pistons and quad carburetors brought the output from 69 horsepower to nearly 100 horsepower. And at a curb weight of less than 1,500 pounds, this little Honda flew. The RSC went on to win the GT1 class at the 1968 12 Hours of Suzuka. And perhaps even more impressively, they won 3rd overall, even ahead of much more powerful cars like the Datsun Fairlady Z, Toyota 1600 GT, and the Prince Skyline 2000 GT. You might even have some experience with the S800 RSC if you played Gran Turismo, where you could get one for 250,000 credits. You could get a Supra for like 40,000 credits though, and then like spend 100,000 credits making it super fast. Anyways, the S800 continued to be an integral part of Honda's lineup in the late 60s. But as Honda began to transition into more profitable passenger cars that could be sold globally, the case for a ultra-small sports car made less and less sense as the years went on. So in 1970, Honda ended production of the S800 with no plans for a replacement. And just like that, the Honda S series, the car that launched Honda's entire automotive business, was dead. Over the next 3 decades, Honda produced a lot of different cars. Some good, some bad, some boring, some exciting. But the Honda S Roadster was just a distant memory for the people at Honda, and really for the entire world. That is, until 1995. Tokyo Motor Show 95. Honda's got something big to announce, and coming off the success of the Civic, Prelude, and NSX, everyone knew it was going to be something special. What they revealed was the Honda SSM, or Sports Study Model. It was a wild concept car with no roof and separate cockpits for the driver and passenger. Power was supplied by a front-engined inline-5 driven through a 5-speed automatic transmission that was derived from the NSX's automatic. And they didn't stop at the transmission. The SSM had the NSX's double wishbone suspension front and rear. I don't think I need to tell you where this concept got its inspiration from. And for Honda to finally show a concept that harkened back to the S Roadsters of the 60s was a big deal. Not to mention, this was the 90s Japanese sports car era, and Honda was knee-deep in developing amazing cars. So if there was ever a time to bring back the S series, it was now. And so, in April of 1999, Honda debuted the S2000. Following the nomenclature of the S500, 600, and 800 that came before it, the S2000 was a drop-top sports car with a 2000cc engine. The naturally aspirated F20C made an astonishing 237 horsepower, which at 2 liters made it the highest horsepower per liter of any car in the world. And it revved to 9,000 RPM. All that went through a 6-speed manual transmission, and only a 6-speed manual transmission. The chassis was also impressive, carrying over a lot of the technologies that were shown in the SSM concept, including the X-bone frame and the double wishbone suspension. But the coolest feature of this car? The gauge cluster. It was like the fully electronic gauge clusters of the 80s, but less crap. And it made climbing those 9,000 RPMs all the more exciting. The S2000 received praise from every single automotive outlet at the time, with it making Car and Driver's 10 best list in 2000, 2001, and 2002. And the F20C engine itself won numerous best engine awards over the years. This was a true return to form for Honda, redefining the back-to-basics sports car segment that they were so dominant in 30 years prior. The AP1 received few changes throughout its production run, mostly just small stuff, new paint colors, and a few ECU revisions. Japan did get a Type V version, which had a different steering rack, suspension, and differentials, but overall, it wasn't leaps and bounds different from the standard car. It wasn't until 2004 that Honda gave the S2000 a real refresh with the AP2. Production moved to Suzuka, Japan, and the car received some major updates. Bigger 17-inch wheels and new rubber were paired with a redesigned suspension setup, which was designed to reduce bump steer, which actually became a little bit of a problem for inexperienced drivers in the AP1. Gearbox synchros changed from brass to carbon fiber to keep the trans buttery smooth, and the exterior saw new bumpers, lights, and exhaust tips. Here in America, we got all of that and a new engine, the F22 C1. Honda bumped the stroke of the F20, giving it a displacement of 2.2 liters, which resulted in more torque and a slightly better power band while retaining the original 237 peak horsepower. But there was a trade-off. The magical 9,000 RPM fuel cutoff was reduced to 8,200 RPM, which to some people wasn't worth the extra torque. All other markets retained the original 2-liter engine, that is until 2006 when Japan got the 2.2 as well. The JDM version made 239 horsepower, which was slightly more, but the big news was that Honda was changing all S2000s to drive-by-wire and introducing electronic stability control. This irked some purists, and in combination with the lower red line, led some to believe that the AP1 was the pure driver's car of the two. But those people just needed to have a little patience, because Honda was cooking something up themselves for the more hardcore S2000 enthusiast. In 2008, the S2000 received one of the coolest trim levels ever, the CR, or Club Racer. The CR was a fully track-oriented version of the S2000, with revised suspension, steering rack, exhaust system, and wider Bridgestone Potenza tires. On top of that, Honda spiced up the exterior with a new lip and a big wing that was, of course, aero-proven to reduce lift. In an effort to reduce weight and complexity, Honda removed the entire power-folding soft-top system and replaced it with a simple black hardtop. And the little area that the soft top would fold into was now full of additional chassis bracing. That wasn't the end of it though. Honda got rid of the spare tire and removed the radio and AC systems completely. You could option the radio and AC back in at the dealer, but come on. track day, bro. Honda initially planned on making 2,000 of these club racer models, but by the end of production, they had only made 699. Meanwhile, in Japan, Honda was working on their own homegrown special version of the S2000, the Type S. It was the CR's weekend-inspired counterpart. It had the same weight loss and exterior treatment as the CR, but slightly softer edged mechanically. The idea of this car was to cater to Japan's spirited drivers who wanted something to drive on the toge. So the Type S retained the power folding soft top system and could be had with most of the base car's creature comforts. Only 1,755 copies of the Type S were made and were exclusive to Japan. And many of you might think that's where the special S2000s ended, but it turns out there were a few more made for an entirely different continent. The S2000 Ultimate Edition and GT Edition 100 were special edition S2000s made for mainland Europe and the UK respectively. These were the S2000's final hurrah in the European continent, and had a litany of changes, although they were mostly cosmetic. The biggest additions were a hardtop, new wheels, and some special interior bits, but what makes these special is their rarity. There isn't a definitive count on the Ultimate Edition S2000s, but the GT Edition 100 in the UK was limited to 100 units, with each car having a plaque in the kick panel denoting its production number. This makes it the rarest version of the S2000 sold worldwide, and it, along with the Type S and Club Racer, made for a fitting send-off to the Honda S2000. Because after 10 years on the market, Honda did what every Japanese OEM does to their beloved sports cars. They killed it. And for most of us, that's where the S2000 story ends. But the Honda S-Series actually did return again in Japan. In 2015, 6 years after the end of the S2000, Honda released the S660. And as the name would suggest, this was another Honda S Roadster, directly linked to the lineage of the S600 and S800. But it turns out it actually wasn't an S Roadster. Rather, this was a mid-engined rear-wheel drive K car. K cars being Japan's class of microcars with 660cc engines or less. At first, this seemed strange, but it made a lot more sense when you realized this wasn't a successor to the S series. This was a successor to the Honda Beat. The Honda Beat was another tiny mid-engine pocket rocket from the early 90s, and it's easily one of Honda's coolest and weirdest cars. But as cool as it may be, it wasn't an S2000. And so the idea of the return of the S Roadster was put to rest once again, and it's stayed dead ever since. But that's okay, because I couldn't have bought a brand new S2000 anyway. I was 5 years old when they came out. So by the time I could drive by 2010, I, like many of you, took to the used market to find an S2000. And back then, S2000s were pretty cheap. Most early AP1 S2000s could be had around 10 to 12,000 US dollars, with some especially beat up cars going for 8 grand or even less. AP2s at that point were still relatively new, so they went for about 20 grand, sometimes more depending on condition. By 2014, they were even cheaper. Most cars generally had more mileage as the years went on, so S2000s were still a dime a dozen, with even AP2s selling for under 20 grand and AP1s regularly selling for 10 grand or less. CRs, despite their rarity, were selling for about 25. And despite the fact that NSXs and Supras started to see a shift in 2015, it wasn't until 2017 that the S2000 started to see a shift in price trend. Namely, there were a few notable sales of some extremely low mileage cars, all above $30,000. This was enough to cause a shift in direction for the S2000. And now, even your standard AP1 was going for $15,000 instead of $12,000, and AP2s were knocking at the $20,000 mark again. 2018 added fuel to the fire, with a few CRs selling well above the $40,000 range, and even one 1,000-mile AP1 selling for $48,000. This was a big deal for S2000s because it finally meant that they were selling for more than their original retail price. So it was only up from here, especially thanks to the fact that there were a lot of low-mileage S2000s laying around. And there was no better example of that than in 2019, when a 2009 S2000 AP2 with 91 miles, yes, 91 miles, sold for a whopping $70,000 at auction. This car hadn't even been registered by a private party yet, and it showed. There wasn't a crease in the seats or even a speck of dust on the underbody. This car was an absolute miracle of preservation, and many people thought that this was going to hold on to the crown for a long time. Not too long of a time though, because the very next year, a 2008 S2000 CR sold for $76,500. This only had 13 1,500 miles, so it ticked all the boxes. Low mileage, great condition, and a CR. Surely then, this was the upper limit. Nearly double the original retail price of the CR, which was already an expensive car for the time. But y'all saw the thumbnail. You know what's coming next. In February of this year, just a few months ago, a 2009 Berlina Black S2000 CR made its way onto the auction block. And with only 985 miles, this made the last CR look well used in comparison. This being a CR with radio and AC, it was just 1 of 10 for that spec in that year, and it was by far the cleanest of those 10. After a week-long auction, the price hammered at $121,111, beating out the previous record by nearly 50 grand, and making it the most expensive S2000 sold to date. So then, I think it's safe to say, unless we win the Powerball, none of us are buying an S2000 CR anytime soon. But what about the regular S2000s? Well, with the help of today's sponsor, Autotempest, I think we can find a few that might be worth it. If you haven't used Autotempest before, it'll probably blow your mind the first time you use it. We can search for Honda S2000s nationwide, and Autotempest will show us results from all the major used car sites like eBay, Cars.com, TrueCar, and even Craigslist. You can see that most low-mileage AP1s are selling for between $25,000 and $30,000, with AP2s into the high 30s in many cases. Scrolling down to results from Cars.com, well, we can see there are a couple cars here for pretty dang good prices. Here's an AP1 with under 100,000 miles for $19,000. A pretty damn good deal in this day and age, assuming it hasn't been rolled over a couple times. There are a few more here for under 20,000 bucks too, so it seems that higher mileage AP1s are still within reach for the average enthusiast. But a lot of these are dealer cars, so let's use my favorite feature of Autotempest and search where the everyman sells his car: Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace. With just one click, we can find every S2000 on every Craigslist across the entire United States. And from there, we can start narrowing down our search to find the best deals in the country. These days though, there are some killer deals to be found on Facebook Marketplace, so let's see if we can't find a few for a great price. Here's a clean title AP1 for $13,900. It's got 188,000 miles on it, but with a little TLC, I think it should clean up nicely. If you're down for a trip to Baja California, here's an AP1 with just 110,000 miles for $16,500. The wheel fitment is questionable, and it's definitely a member of the Big Wang gang, but all of that is easily changeable. Speaking of questionable choices though, here's an 01 S2000 in Las Vegas with some very unique fender flares. It's only got 130,000 miles, and it's actually in pretty good shape. It's got a fastback hardtop, which actually looks awesome, and the interior is really quite nice with some custom diamond patterned red leather seats. If you're just looking for something more standard though, here's a 2004 with 130,000 miles for 20 grand. It's in great condition with just a few choice modifications, including real Regamasters. So if you're near the Grand Canyon State, you could pick this up and get a hike in while you're there. So then, the affordable S2000 still exists in 2021, they just might require a bit of time and money on your end. But to get a well-sorted car, you're looking at $30,000 to start, with AP2s touching $40,000. A far cry from the days of clean $10,000 S2000s. But with the aggressive trend upwards over the years, even these prices might be considered bargains in the not-so-distant future. And while it might be a little sad that one of the most pure, distilled sports cars of the modern era, a car that everyone should be able to experience, is pricing out regular enthusiasts year over year, the S2000 still presents an interesting opportunity for you to get your hands on an appreciating classic car that's still within reach. An opportunity that's no longer possible with cars like the NSX, Supra, and Skyline GTR. So if you appreciate the wind in your hair and 9,000 RPM in your ears, and you can afford it, buy an S2000. Because with the way prices are going, you might not be able to for long. Thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you to Autotempest for sponsoring this video. Go check them out with the link in the description and find that perfect S2000 for yourself. Or search all the used car sites at once and find the best deal for whatever car your heart desires. I'll see you guys in the next one.